The tall, gangly thing?
Hello and welcome. Today I am joined by TFT casting extraordinaire. You may know him from many other games, StarCraft, League of Legends, Overwatch. Most likely, since you're watching this this video, it's from Teamfight Tactics. But thank you, DoA, for joining me today.
Hey, happy to be here. I've really enjoyed watching your other interviews, so hyped to be on the show.
For the people who don't know much about you, can you actually just give us a little bit of background on who you are?
Yeah, so my name's Eric DoA Lonquist is my gamer name, and I've been doing esports casting for a little over 10 years now. I can't believe it's been a decade already, but I started in 2010 with StarCraft 2, just putting replays up on YouTube just for fun. Got an offer after about 6 months of that to move to South Korea to do the GSL, which was the big StarCraft 2 league out there. So went out there, did StarCraft 2, like you mentioned, League of Legends, a lot of years of Hearthstone. Came back to America to start to help start the Overwatch League. Did that for a couple of years, and after leaving that, just wanted to get back into the esports trenches and build some stuff in the grassroots side of esports. And so I've been working in education with some high school organizations and at my old college, and then also doing a lot of TFT and other games, and just kind of generally putting my hands in as many of the esports, cookie jars as I can, I guess. I don't know, but only with approval. I'm not stealing cookies here. I'm just saying it's it's approved cookie consuming.
Sure. Yeah. And like you mentioned, you've worked with a lot of games like StarCraft, League of Legends, Overwatch. These games are typically more fast-paced games, and you mentioned how you've done Hearthstone as well. But TFT is definitely different than a lot of the games that people may know you for. And I am curious, what is it about TFT that's actually drawn you into the scene?
Well, I've always liked strategy games, and I did a lot of years of Hearthstone because I had played Magic the Gathering since the mid '90s. I played in a lot of tournaments. I was a DCI judge in the late '90s, early 2000s in the regional tournaments in my area. I competed in the old Star Wars CCG way back in the day. Went to tournaments all over the Midwest at the end of high school, early college. So I've always loved strategy games, and in esports, you didn't really get an opportunity to do a lot of that until Hearthstone came along, and that was really the first big turn-based strategy game, I think, that really hit it in an esports sense. Obviously, there's a lot of games outside of that in other areas, but for esports, viewable esports specifically, Hearthstone was the first big one. So Artosis and I did a lot of the very early content for that game, and then I went on to do a bunch of seasons for OGN. But so that love of strategy games led me to try out auto chess when it first came out. I played a little bit of auto chess. Then I jumped into Dota Underlords, which was really fun, and played that for a while. Basically, like 2019 Overwatch League, like everybody was playing Underlords, like between games and all that. And then when TFT came out, I'm like, well, I'm going to try TFT because, I don't really know the Dota characters very well, but I'm very familiar with the League of Legends characters, obviously. So I started playing TFT in set one, and I was like, oh, well, this is just the best version of auto chess, so I'm just going to play this. So I stopped playing Underlords, went all in on TFT, and then, I had the career change where I decided to leave the Overwatch League, and I'm like, I'm going to see, what this TFC pro scene is all about. And so spent a lot of time like grinding and learning the game really well, more than just kind of as a casual player as I was before, and got involved in some broadcasts with Frodan early on, and got involved with Giant Slayer early last year, and it's kind of just grown from there. It's been great. I've loved getting into it, and TFT is just a ton of fun to cast because there's always something to think about and something to talk about.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's cool to see someone kind of coming from the larger esports scene into a smaller grassroots effort like TFT, and kind of building it from the ground up. Like you had mentioned, you have a large breadth of games that you've casted in the past. And one of the things I've always wondered about casters is that in order to cast effectively, I'd imagine you have to have, a certain level of working knowledge of the game above the casual player. But how do you actually balance having proficiency in so many games while also being able to practice and train your own casting ability?
It's really just a matter of time management, and like honestly, I have always been terrible at time management. I'm shocked I've been able to stay with it, frankly, because it really does come down to that. It really does come down to compartmentalizing things and figuring out more than anything. I think what's worked for me is figuring out a process to learn games, so I can, if I need to learn a game, I look at a game and I say, all right, well, first of all, the big question. Is this a game where I will learn more by playing or watching? And once I identify that, then that gives me a direction to go. And so we'll use TFT as the example where watching is very beneficial for sure. There needs to be a lot of it, but it is a game like Hearthstone, like a lot of CCGs and things like StarCraft, where you need to play a lot, I think, to be good too at casting it. So I decided to kind of divide my time 50-50 sort of. And I'm still a competitive gamer, so I want to be as highly ranked as possible. So it's partially my own gameplay, but at the end of the day, I have to kind of accept that my playing is to serve my casting and not my rank, right? So for instance, yesterday I was studying Aegon style because it was very unique in terms of the way people were playing in the NA finals. And so I watched a couple of his games, and then I went on the ladder and tried to play exactly like that. Played a couple of games, got a sense of sort of like a little bit more of a feel for it. That's what playing brings you. And then having that feel for it, going back and watching more VODs of his games and being like, okay, well, now I see why he did this in this situation because I experienced this thing. And now I get why I made that decision. It maybe was right or wrong and all that. So to kind of like conclude a long rambling answer to your question, I guess, it's not easy. But I think if you develop a really strong process of how to approach each game, you can do it, And so for TFT, it's nice because some games you don't get to play as much. Like League of Legends, playing it helps me almost zero for casting it, right? Because my games will never be the same as the experience a pro player will have in their game, or my team will not be doing the same things pro teams are doing. But in TFT, even if I'm not playing against better people, my own play can try to emulate what I see pros doing. And so by doing that, and by emulating it as closely as I can get more into the mindset of why they're doing what they're doing. I can understand what they're feeling. I can understand the decision-making more. Other games like that have been, Hearthstone, of course, but also StarCraft as well. You can practice a build order. And even if you're not going to do it as well as the pros, getting that sort of feeling and understanding the build order from a playing level helps you in a game than say in a StarCraft sense, oh, they missed their gas by 5 seconds. That's going to throw off this timing. That's going to make them vulnerable against this attack from their opponent because of the build they're doing. So in TFT as well, you can be like, oh, well, they rolled a little bit of gold here, which normally you don't do, but they needed to do it because of X and Y reason. And did it work or not? And that's what you get from kind of the combination of playing and watching.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I think maybe it's fair to say that it depends on how closely the fundamentals of the game look like at a low level versus a high level, and that maybe plays into how much time you need to spend playing versus watching. One of the things I did want to ask you specifically regarding casting, it's easy to watch a stream, watch a tournament, listen to a caster, and say, I could do that. I'm just talking over a game. But I'm sure there are actually difficult parts of casting that people commonly overlook. What would you say are actually some of the toughest parts of casting?
I think the toughest part is just kind of staying with it once video games become your job, right? Because it's anyone can go, oh, well, video games all day, that sounds like a wonderland, and it is. I'm not going to lie, it's a ton of fun, but at the same time, there's going to be times where the last thing you want to do is keep looking at a screen. You're looking at the screen all day, keeping your focus. I have a really hard time focusing in general. So keeping your focus on something like that when other things are vying for your attention. There's a lot of vocal training that comes into it. That's a side of it people don't think a lot about, is not only do you have to train your voice, you have to take efforts to make sure your voice stays healthy. You have to make sure that you're doing other things like in making sure you're articulate. Am I going too fast? Am I going too slow? Am I setting the proper emotional tone for the moment in the broadcast? It's a very kind of complex thing that if you're doing it well, looks very simple, which is great because that's what you want. Like if people are saying it looks simple, that means you're doing your job well, in my opinion.
Yeah,
there's a lot more that goes into it. Yeah.
I work as a graphic designer, and similarly, one of the things that people say is, if people notice your designs, then you failed. And it kind of sounds like there are similarities to casting in that sense. That you want.
I was a graphic designer for a little while too, actually.
Oh, okay. So so definitely, I'm sure you see the similarities there, where it's like your efforts are to make the experience, one clean, unnoticeable package that serves its purpose,
right,
and not just to be the flourish on top. You want to be part of the inner workings of the machine.
Yeah, because in graphic design, your goal is to guide their eye in a way where they're not realizing it's being, guided. And in casting, you're trying to sort of like guide their emotions and their experience in a way where they're not noticing you as much as enjoying the game. So
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And at this point, you've casted TFT for quite a while. You've seen a lot of different moments in tournament, and I have to ask, what are some of your favorite moments you've actually seen while casting?
Some of the favorite moments. Wow. I mean, it's so my first tournament was in set 2, was at the end of set 2. And that was a tournament actually that GV8 won. And that was the era where Blender, I don't know if a lot of people remember that, but Blender was the big comp where you built a Nocturne and you turned him into a duelist, if I recall correctly. And
Blade Master, yeah.
Yeah, Blade Master, that's what it was, yeah. And he just went wild and he just spun around, hence the term Blender. So a lot of people are playing that, and just like seeing GV8 be able to kind of play that a lot of games in a row and being able to see how he sort of navigated through that, despite what his start was, despite what the lobby was. It was a really strong comp. It was probably OP, but still, seeing someone kind of go through that in my initial stages of TFT learning, I was like, wow, that player is really good. And it's neat to see all the different ways they can approach the same tree in different game contexts, so that was really fun. But just overall, there's been so many fun eras. So it's been more, for me, it's been more eras than moments, I guess, per se. There was of course like the Mech Infiltrator era when you had players like Kyun just doing that every game. We've had really cool tournament moments where we had players like Casey Double win set 3 worlds where no one really kind of knew, I think, who he was before that. And it was, at least not in the North American scene anyway. And so it's cool to see players come up. It's neat to see different styles develop. I'm trying to think of like specific moments, but honestly, it's more just like sort of eras that stand out to me. Like I was saying, yeah, I feel like there's a couple of them. I mean, like recently, obviously, you had the how do you add up to 9 ashes moment, but it's there's stuff like that. But overall, I just kind of take it in terms of kind of more eras of the game that are interesting to me, I guess.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things about being a part of the scene from the early days is that, you're talking about eras, and I hadn't really thought of it like that before, but really that is what it is. In a couple of years, hopefully TFT is still thriving and the esports scene is continuing. Like, we will look back and see set 3 as the first time there was a real international competition where we saw this French player come out of the woodwork and make a name for himself when, like you said, a lot of NA players wrote him off, and we actually saw an incredible EU performance from that tournament. So it is cool to be a part of those moments that are eventually going to define TFT history later on.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point, though, because I think it is tough to really pinpoint a lot of particular moments in TFT esports right now. And there's a couple of factors that go into it. I think one, speaking as a caster, I think the casting needs to get better. I think we need to, over time, we're going to be able to get that combination of, as casters, recognizing when a really big moment is happening, because it's a little bit harder in TFT. It's not like League of Legends where you can see someone pull off like an amazing outplay or something like that. The big moments in TFT are more subtle. They're like a big roll down or a really big transition very quickly, very cleanly, and so recognizing those in the moment is going to be one of the key things. And I'm not sure if like spectator mode is going to help more with that too, because with TFT, the difficulty is you're watching essentially 8 people at once, So the lead up to those big moments is very important. So you have the context for why that moment is important. And so I think the evolution of TFT observing is going to play a big part in kind of being able to recognize those moments, but also just in terms of casting as well, being able to show off those big outplays more than, what we already do, which is generally positioning stuff in the late game is the big outplay moments right now. But I think the big comp transition moments, some of the big roll downs, if they're done very skillfully, can be called out more. We just need to get better doing it, honestly.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely fair. And TFT on the esports side has definitely seen a lot of criticism, I would say, since its inception. Whether it's, like you were saying, the lack of spectator mode, for certain regions, the lack of tournaments as well. But there's also been a lot of growth, especially in the last couple of months. I am curious, just because you've seen so many different esports, rise and grow into like such a beautiful scene. What are your personal thoughts on the competitive landscape of Teamfight Tactics?
It could always be better, but I'm not honestly that worried about it. Like you mentioned, I've seen so many games come up that TFT is on a fairly normal trajectory as far as an esport goes, as far as the growth from small community tournaments to bigger tournaments to then developer supported tournaments. We're on a fairly normal trajectory, I would say, for that. The big weird thing in TFT is no spectator mode. That's kind of the strangest aspect of this. I can't be too hard on them about that though, because I know the coding in League of Legends is frankly a spaghetti code is what they always say. It's like the planet Coruscant in Star Wars, where it's like all gleaming and shiny skyscrapers on the top, and if you go down like 1,000 feet, it's all this wires and circuitry and ancient ruins that nobody really knows how they function or like where they came from, but they support what's on top, so you don't want to mess with it. Right, but it makes it hard to build new things sometimes. So there's that, and then also in terms of just TFT's success as a video game, things like mobile mode and stuff like that, I agree needed to come first, because if we don't have players, then we don't have any esports scene to build from that, right? So it's been weird not having spectator mode, but given TFT's unique situation as a video game, I can't be too hard on them. Obviously, I can't wait for it. It's going to be a massive difference for us, but like I said, I don't think it's anything people should be getting too salty about,
Yeah, and definitely. And like I had mentioned before, I think like the last couple of months, we've really seen a lot of life being brought to the competitive scene. I mean, both of us are in NA, and I can definitely speak for the NA scene where if you look at the competitive scene for NA in set 4 versus set 3, I mean, it's night and day. Giant Slayer has really done a lot,
They're
especially with the partnerships. I know Team Liquid and Cloud9 also have worked on some tournaments as well. The inclusion of open brackets, the qualifiers, the Challenger Series, there is so much being brought to the competitive scene in set 4 that I think it's encouraging for set 5.
Yeah, the only thing I really want for set 5 is just more information earlier. That's what we really lacked this time. Is it once we got rolling, it was fine, especially for NA, but other regions, it seems like they just need more people to get the stuff done. It sounds like maybe there's, and I only speculate here, but it sounds like maybe there's some staffing issues where they don't have people in place to be able to put those esports plans into motion soon enough. So I really hope on the Riot side that the set 5 plans are already being developed, that they're more robust and they're more quickly communicated, so people know, first of all, if there's something to play for and what it is, So that's more than spectator mode, I think, right now. For set 5, I just want a clear plan from day one of the set, for what esports is going to be. We get that rolling fast, and that's going to do a lot.
Definitely, yeah. I think a clean infrastructure is exactly what the scene needs. And so let's move forward to actually this weekend is the final weekend of the NA regionals. We're going to have 4 players qualify to Worlds, and you've been casting regionals for this past weekend. And what I'd love to know is actually if you have any favorites going into this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously have to mention Sox, right? I mean, he's great. He's been a player that I've liked watching for a long time. I think he played really well last weekend. He looked a little bit shaky on day 1. Day 2 was a lot better, but I said on the broadcast, if he makes it through the first weekend, he's gonna make it to Worlds, and I'll stand by that, because I think he just sees the game at a different level than anyone else, and I think he's got a really good shot. I hope I'm not caster cursing him here, but I think he's been one of my favorites right from day 1. Another favorite to get to the final day, at least in my opinion, is Aegon. I think Aegon's come into it with a really unique strategy, and I think his strategy is based solely around getting top 4s, because which is smart, because if you think about it, getting a top 4 every game is going to get you to the final table, right? It's going to get you to the last day, no problem, because you're always going to be in that top part, right? So I think if he keeps playing the way he has been playing, he shouldn't have any problems. Tomorrow, I think on the final day, he's going to come with something different, because you need to adapt that a bit if you're going to start taking firsts. So I really hope he makes the final lobby, because I really want to see what he's got in mind for that final day, because I think you do need to switch it up a little bit for the last day, but we'll see. Other than that, I would love to see some of the open qualifier players like the Jirachi, do well. I think they were really good about The one game that we really got to see, and we haven't really seen that much of their play, and I need to go back and watch some more of it, but they did a really good job of using really unfortunate item drops to put together a very unique way of handling that and doing well in that particular game. And they've stuck with it. They're still in the tournament. So, I hope we see some of those open qualifier players make it through as well. There's a lot to be excited about. Yeah.
Definitely, yeah. And if you guys haven't already, I definitely encourage you to watch DoA's video with Mismatch Socks in his series called Galaxy Brain, where they go through some of his games from this past weekend or whenever you're watching it, the first weekend of any regional qualifiers. And it's a really, really great watch. But I completely agree. The two that I would have actually said were also Socks and Aegon. I think one of the things I would love to see for NA to do is actually to send 4 different players that have 4 unique play styles. So if we had something that was Aegon, DQA, Socks, and maybe someone like Jirachi, like one of these open bracket players.
Like Otter Bear, like who knows who Otter Bear is?
Yeah, exactly.
He's like this mysterious shadow player, but he's in there, so.
Especially because we saw so many of the fan favorites go out so early in the tournament. Yeah. I think at this point I would love to just see North America's 4 representatives just be 4 curveballs that the rest of the world just doesn't know how to deal with them because they don't, they're not Grand Vice, they're not Soju, they're not Kyun, they're not the big streamers that many people associate with North America. I think there's
Solus,
a lot.
You got to talk about Solus too. He's a shoot.
Oh my gosh,
so good.
Yeah, Solus popped off. I mean, he was. Did he actually? He was points leader on on Sunday. Is that what it was?
Yeah. Day 1 was Valet. Day 2, I think day 2 was Solus. Yeah, because we interviewed him. Yeah, it was Solus. Yep. But he got like a bunch of firsts, and anyone who remembers Solus from the Darkstar meta from set 3 knows that like when Solus like gets a patch, when it like clicks for him, he just instantly becomes one of the best players in the game. And it feels like this patch is one where he really has a good handle on it. So I think I'd be shocked if he didn't make it to the final day.
Yep. Yeah, I'm excited to see this weekend to see what these players bring to the table. And you've casted so many different games in the past. We've talked a bunch about all the other experience that you've had up to this point. But one thing I was wondering is, are there any games that you haven't actually casted in your career that if the opportunity were there, you'd actually just love to hop on the mic for?
That's a great question, because there's so many, frankly. I think it's more genre than particular game. The only genre that I really haven't casted yet is a fighting game. So I really want to do a fighting game at some point. I've loved Smash for a lot of years. I can't claim to be like hugely into the pro scene. I just watch tournaments, when they're on. I'm pretty casual with it. I'm a casual fan, but like if the opportunity presented, I would love to dive more into a game like Smash. The new Guilty Gear comes out next month, so maybe I'll dive into Guilty Gear Strive and try to get into it for that, because it's kind of like after you've been doing it for 10 years, you're kind of like, all right, well, what sort of like you think of it like a gamer, right? Like we're gamers. I'm like, what sort of achievements can I unlock, yet? Where it's like I've done world championships for a bunch of different games. I've done a bunch of different games. I've been all over the world. But if I can be like, I've done major tournaments for every game, then for every genre, that'd be great. So I'd love to do a fighting game at some point. Because I actually like in junior high, I kind of like lived in the arcades. So I grew up playing a ton of fighting games in the arcades. I owned the Primal Rage machine in my local arcade. Like nobody could touch me on that. Nobody knows what Primal Rage is anymore, but like I was the king of that machine, and I was pretty good at Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 as well. I had a mean Cabal because I just used that broken combo. Like if you know, you know. But so it'd be fun to do a fighting game. I would love to do the other big one. I would love to do a show for at some point is World of Warcraft, because I've been playing World of Warcraft probably more than any other game ever of all time. And if I did WoW, then I could say I've done broadcasts on a professional level for every Blizzard game, which would be pretty neat to be able to say. So that's like the 2 goals. I'm not including Diablo in this because there's no PvP. So
yeah, that'd be quite the accolade for sure. And Riot had announced that fighting game, I guess like a couple of years ago, that they had put into development. So you never know what's in store for the
connections.
Future. Yeah, definitely be there.
We'll see.
And I'm sure a lot of people actually ask you about how to get into casting. People say that it's something they're interested in. They don't really know where to start. What advice do you actually have for those people who want to get into casting?
I think I think a professional in any industry, when someone approaches them and says, "I want to do this, but I don't know where to start," that's immediately kind of a red flag, honestly, where it's like, well, the people that really want to do it and really are going to do it would have already done it. Like if you want to cast, you just figure it out. And I'm not saying don't ever ask for advice. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying, like, if you want to do it, right? Like when I started doing it, I decided that I wanted to try it. I didn't have a lot of money at the time, so I spent $90 on a microphone. It was a blue Snowball. It's still like over there on the shelf. And I'm like, all right, if I'm going to spend $90 on a microphone, I need to make sure I make it worth it. So I'm going to do at least 3 broadcasts per week for my YouTube channel. And I just set that goal for myself. And what I didn't know I was doing it at the time, I was setting a really, really good path for myself to get good, which is I was practicing consistently, and I was also producing content consistently. And those are the 2 main things, I think, if you're going to get into it, that you need to do to be successful. Because you need to show, you need to improve, and you improve by practicing, like anything else. And by doing this practice, you also show people improvement trajectory if they go back and look at the body of your work. And they can't see that if you have no work, right? So, they'll see that you're consistent, you're hardworking, and that will make them more likely to hire you, which will lead to bigger and better things. So really, at the end of the day, it's first of all, just do it, and do it because you like it. Don't do it to try to get famous. Because, come on, even the most famous esports casters, like F-tier celebrities or something, like, come on, it's esports. We're not that big. Let's be realistic. But if you want to get into it because you love games, then do it, and set a goal to do it consistently, because you'll be improving and you'll be showing other people you can improve, and you'll be showing them that you can be consistent. Those are the 2 best things you can do.
Sounds like really, really great advice. DoA, before we go, is there anything that you'd like to shout out?
Yeah, I mean, this weekend, definitely watch the TFT NA regionals, NA finals, whatever you want to call them. It's going to be great. It's going to be a lot of fun. Props to Giant Slayer for putting that one on. They've done great work in the scene. Shout out for them as well. They've done a lot to, improve the TFT scene and really support it as it's been coming out. I guess thanks everybody out there who's watched my stuff over the years. Check out my socials, sub, all that, ring the bells. I don't know. I'm not good at any of the social stuff, but do all that stuff so I don't have to tell you to do it, please. And thanks for inviting me on. It's been really fun.
Yeah, I know. Thank you for coming on. I had a great time talking with you today. For those of you guys who are watching, thank you so much for getting through this interview. I know it's a little bit longer, but actually I think probably one of the best ones we've had up to this point.
Oh, wow.
So definitely make sure you're watching regionals this weekend. Look out next week for a couple other interviews that I have lined up that I'm very excited for if I can get them through. So won't spoil anything, but things could definitely get pretty exciting.
It's Barack Obama.
And that's all I have for you guys. I'll see you later, and make sure you watch whatever interview comes out in the future. Take care.